After that, you try to shake it, you'll be like, if you're 20 years ago, fires are this to that where I can see a fire down at the bottom. If this doesn't get under control, it's just going to come right at the canyon. My house is the first one. But it's worked out so burned up the copy machine, didn't you?
I know, totally. I'm saving
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I think we're going to start our meeting now with presentation. My name is Yolanda Schwartz. I'm part of the city staff, and we have with us many members of the fire department, community association staff, 2 of our council members.
What's your position with the city?
I'm the interim city manager.
I'm so sorry, Yolanda.
Welcome and come in. On the way out, if you wouldn't mind, sign in if you haven't signed in so we know who was here. We have a lot of handouts out there as well. Also, we are going to try to videotape this presentation today, so if you wouldn't mind, we're going to hold up to for your questions towards the end of the presentation. So let our presenters speak, let all the others that want to speak first, and then we will take your questions, and if you need to jot them down, we can offer you a pad and a paper and a pencil. Anyway, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. As you know, we're not out of the woods yet. California is still in the drought, and drought brings wildfires. In our community especially, we have large lots. You have canyons, you have hillsides, you have a lot of areas that are prone to wildfires. The fact that we've been designated by the state of California Fire Marshal to be in the very high fire severity zone speaks volumes. It basically says that we have so much material here that fuels the fires, and there is something we need to protect ourselves, protect your properties, your animals, and especially your homes, of course. The City Council, as you know, is very concerned with the wildfires in our city. We had several in the past. They damaged several properties, and the City Council formed a subcommittee. 2 council members are on the subcommittee, Council Member Derringer and Black, the members of the Pat Wilson. I am so sorry, you're on the other committee, and they're both here. Thank you. Councilmember Mersch is here as well. Also part of the subcommittee are the members of staff of the Homeowners Association. They're partnered with us to educate the community and to hopefully and bring all this together. The fire department has been very, very helpful to us, and as you know, they are very vocal about preventing, protecting from the fires. So the subcommittee desires to prepare what's called a community wildfire protection plan. And these plans serve as a mechanism for communities to assess the risk and to hopefully develop plans and mechanisms to not so much as prevent fires, but protect your property from fires and assess the risk of fires. So today's presentation, as part of the community wildfire protection plan, is an educational component in order for you, the residents, to know how to protect yourselves and hopefully write it into the plan. We need to educate you about how to do that. And we have one of 4 speakers today. We had Jay Lopez arranged for 4 speakers that throughout this year, through I guess August, we'll be having every other month or so. And there is also the green flyer out on the counter there. Will tell you what they are. So today's presentation is going to be on how to protect your home from fires. Like I said, you may not always be able to prevent a wildfire, but you may do something around your home and your property to prevent the effects and to minimize the effect of a fire. So we hope you will partner with us in order to do this wildfire protection. Community wildfire protection plan. We need your help. We need your input. We want you to come to meetings and tell us what it is that you're concerned with and what you think you would be willing and able to do to your own property and to the and for the betterment of the entire community. So we hope you keep coming to these meetings and you will give us input. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jay Lopez, who is the fire chief representative, and he will introduce our speaker, a retired fire marshal and a chief, and he's doing this for us pro bono, so we really thank him very, very much for coming out and doing this.
I did get a dinner.
He did get a dinner, yes, thank you.
Congratulations on the intern
Thank
position. So I know it's a big job and you're perfect for it. Jay Lopez, LA County Fire Department Forestry Division, and this is being done in conjunction with the community and the association. So in the back we have our LA County Fire Department representative. Would you mind introducing each one of you guys?
I'm Nina DePerry. I'm a forestry technician for the fire plant unit.
Yeah, Ron Durbin, Acting Assistant Chief for Natural Resources Section.
Dave Whitney, I'm the Deputy Forester at Fire Plant.
And we're all here to support the city in their efforts to create a community wildfire protection plan. And we arranged for this series of talks that we're going to have. And I'm honored to introduce Chief Cliff Hunter, who I know for many years, and his work has been amazing. A lot of his work is actually documented throughout the state, and it's been the leading research for some of the building codes that we have right now. So I'm going to let you talk about yourself and introduce yourself, but thank you for coming, Cliff, social long distance.
Okay, great. Thank you. I tried to retire, but I ended up recycling. As long as they don't crush me and melt me, I'm really doing good. So I'm staying very active, and I feel an involvement in a way to get back to the community. And so I started in the fire service in 1970. I was a volunteer fireman. And as time went on, I became a full-time firefighter, I became a captain, and I became a deputy chief. I was a fire marshal in between there as well. Fire marshal and prevention go together very strongly. So the two busiest people in the department are generally the Fire Prevention Bureau and the chief. Or operations, this could be the other side if you look at. Operations takes care of all the firefighting. So I generated some interest when we went to work for Rancho Santa Fe as their fire marshal. Very similar community, 2.5 acre lots, big houses. In fact, my biggest house was 51,000 square foot. So we call those small industrial buildings, but you know, it's on 23 acres and it's a beautiful house. And the customer was very happy with it. But we made it fire safe. He had 5 ecosystems in it. He had a Mediterranean, he had a forest, he had, you name it, he put it in there, and he got all this stuff from different countries. So I started developing, when I worked for the county as the fire marshal, and I worked for the Department of Planning and Land Use, which is unusual, because usually you don't have a fire department guy working in the Department of Planning and Land Use. So I was called to sit on the committee in 2000 up at the state with Ron Coleman, who is a historian in fire. He got fire sprinklers started in Sacramento way back when. Anyway, we brought in 20 experts from all over the state, and we asked a very simple question: why are we losing homes to wildfire? And everybody had their opinion and their ideas. But we did this at Berkeley, and we did it at the Forest Product Labs and they look at wood durability and wire things. So what we did is we got scientists together and fire guys together. Well, that was a real challenge because scientists think in a different plane than firemen. It's kind of like artists and firemen. They don't think the same planes. But anyway, we got together and we started looking at reasons. So we put a bunch of stuff together. I happened to be in a unique position that I could go back to our county and affect some code changes. And in San Diego County from 67 to about 2007, we lost a little over 10,000 homes to wildfire. And when we changed the codes in 2003, then the 2000 fire came back. Of those new homes that were built, we only lost 2%. A very small number. So hardening the structure and taking care of it can save your home. And that's a key component. Everybody worries about the vegetation. I kind of drive through your community today. It's really beautiful. Got a lot of pine trees, you know, yew trees. I saw some cypress and junipers. Junipers are not my favorite plant, by the way, but there's a lot of them out there. And I think appropriately placed within 30 foot of your home, that's okay. And what we had is people wanted to put them in their front yard. And I said, if you can put them in a pot and we can move it, I'm up for it. Well, you know how big junipers get. That didn't go over very well, but fireman has to triage homes when they go in to fight fire, and that's part of the triage, is moving stuff away from the house. Your wood piles, your trash cans, and things like that. So
Yes.
I'm going to start us off on a very exciting video that was taken in the community that I was working in. And I'm not looking for business, but I have to put that up there. It's just what happens. I'm pretty busy as it is.
Could I?
Yes,
You
on the
need-
green line.
No, you need to stand on this side of the line.
Okay, is that
so
better?
we can tape you. Sorry.
That better?
Yep, perfect.
good.
But we here, see that green?
I see that green line, but you said not that. Anyway, so I'm going to give you my perspective, what can save your home here in the community. And I'm going to start it off with a little warm video here. Is something that happened in Rancho. Let me see. Excuse me for this, but we had to do a little bit of changes here. You don't have volume here, do you?
Yeah.
Do you? I didn't see it. Oh, there it is, speaker.
I think it's muted. It's muted. Oh, yeah, you got it there, yeah.
And in a state-of-the-art research facility, a quantum leap forward for building science. The dream of bringing the most advanced science possible to loss mitigation had existed for years. So when the Institute for...
This is a video in 2007 after the Woods Creek fire. A company came to me by the Institute of Home Business Safety and said, we're going to build a test facility. I said, oh, you're going to build a test facility? I've heard that for a lot of times. And what the test facility was going to do is they're going to simulate a wildfire. They're going to use it for rain, use it for hail, and wind. So in 2010, they asked me to come back and look at the facility. Damn, they did it. So that was in conjunction with State Farm and the insurance companies. So I'm going to let us,
Business and home safety
when you go through it, you can see what they have to do.
A reality. The possibilities seemed limitless.
This is
Better
amazing
than standing on the
opportunity
other
to meet
side.
some of the best architects and
Because
engineers in
there's
the world.
nobody over there.
This project. We will be working with universities and public
There we go.
sector,
That's better.
private industry organizations who do research from all over the country to organize a series of tests that will produce outcomes that will make homes safer, that will make businesses safer. And I think that it is long overdue that we take a really rigorous scientific approach to loss prevention on the property side in the same way that we have with auto safety. Yeah, it's long overdue.
Nobody else in the world will be able to do what we'll be able to do in this new lab, and that will include creating very realistically in a controlled environment a Category 3 hurricane with wind and water, with variable droplet sizes, with the gustiness of the wind actually feeling very much like it would if you were outside in a hurricane. We'll be able to do wind-blown fire. We'll be creating embers, firebrands, and injecting them into the stream of wind, so we're replicating a wildfire. We're going to go out and find ways to create realistic hailstones.
Long overdue? Perhaps. Exciting? Certainly. But how to do it? First, organizers had to find just the right location.
It will be very noisy.
So we were looking for a remote area, we're looking for buffers on that noise. Another major feature that we're looking for is with the heart of this facility being basically a large wind tunnel, and one where we're pulling air in one end and shooting it out the other end. Having a bit of a hill, the topography here helped a lot, and that we've got an inlet where it's downhill, the air can expand out, slow down before it hits trees and power lines that we do for.
The biggest challenge, though, is realistically recreating the ravages of Mother Nature, especially a major hurricane in the South Carolina countryside. To do that, IDHS researchers propose a wind chamber like none other, with technical concerns like none other.
Unique is an understatement. It's actually going to be a large tower, and on the end of one of that tower is going to be 105 fans. And these are not little fans in your window. These are large fans. If you had one fan at one speed, another fan at another speed, and times 105, they're all different speeds. Next thing you know, the whole thing's wobbling around, and the blob will disrupt the whole building. You've got to have all this synchronized so that all your fans are on at the same speed and go off at the same speed.
But the technical concerns were matched by the need to finally make this dream a reality, to have a means of determining conclusively what will make buildings stronger.
After the landfalling hurricanes, especially the major hurricanes, I would always try to go to the landfall area and see the damage for myself. And I could see what worked and what didn't work. And at least from where I sit, and I'm still very involved in the hurricane program, we keep making some of the same mistakes over and over again. After a big storm, a lot of us go out and we look at damaged buildings. That's actually a fairly depressing thing to do. You're looking at the final result of the wind damage, and you don't really know what are the critical paths to get to that damaged state. And that's what the research facility will allow us to do. It's about not having to wait for the next storm to see how well our newest technologies in making buildings safe are performing. We can actually just put it right into the oven being the research center, and test it out.
This is a full-scale facility for wind engineers, specifically those focusing on low-rise residential and commercial infrastructure and their resistance to wind. For that group of people, researchers and practitioners, this facility represents essentially sort of a holy grail, or an ability to move forward with mitigating damage from high winds in a much faster way than we've been able to in the past.
The new research center will enable researchers to subject finished structures to the ravages of a major storm, then record the results on high-speed cameras and analyze the data.
We have on the one hand a very typical conventional construction house and an exact replica that has a few added features that don't add a lot of cost, but certainly add a lot of structural strength. We're going to turn the fans on and we're going to see how these two structures perform. Homes and commercial buildings are designed and built in every corner of this country, and we hope in other countries as well. What we can do here is something that no one else has ever been able to do. As we proved today, a full-scale demonstration of the power of wind and water that later on will be able to add fire and hail, and show people, consumers in particular, how to demand better construction and what better construction means. There's a lot of things that people can do to make the homes they live in, businesses where they work, and therefore the communities much safer and stronger against things like wind, water, fire, and hail that aren't going to go away. The only thing we can do is build better and build stronger, and we're going to show the world how to do that.
So, who benefits when we start to know conclusively how to build more storm-resistant structures? In a word, everyone.
We saw record catastrophe losses over the past 10 years, some $200 billion of insured catastrophe losses in the United States alone. And what we're going to do with the construction of the IDHS Research Center is be able to do analyses and scientific studies that tell us ahead of time what kind of designs can be incorporated in homes, businesses, and all sorts of structures that will allow us to prevent this damage from occurring to begin with.
These are all essential economic elements that go to the well-being of the local economy. That testing information, that data, is really critical to making good economic choices both on the private sector and the public sector as we invest in affordable housing for the
procuring choices. You want to spend the dollars on what works, and you don't want to spend your dollars on what doesn't work. You know, right now it's guesswork and all. If we had some real hard data and some real tests and conclusive evidence about what will work and what won't work, you focus limited resources on effective mitigation techniques, and that's what it's all about, is protecting things from the storm. Protection from the storm. That's what the IDHS Research Center was built to discover, fine-tune, and promote. Safer, more loss-resistant homes and businesses. A more secure way of living for the next generation and generations to come.
So, you said, did you notice in the video, he said, well, and we're gonna do this with fire. Well, the next video is gonna show it done with fire. It's gonna go through the details. It's gonna talk about 1/8 inch screening, it's talking different materials. But when we look at a house, and I know your association here, boxed or timbered eaves, maybe timber eaves are like 4x6s, you know. We're gonna talk about vents. I have a lot of samples of different vents and things that you can do. Brand guard vents, they're inexpensive, but a homeowner can do it himself if he needs to. The windows, Chapter 7A of the building code, change the windows that today, anytime you build a new home, one of the panes has to be tempered, and the other can be a needle glass. We always had standard tempered if you're with an 1/8 inch floor, ground, next to doors, those were always tempered. Glass doors, your sliding glass doors are tempered. Well, what we found doing damage assessment, that one pane would break, but the second pane wouldn't break. And so, okay, that seems to be working, so we got to put in the code. Well, that wasn't easy, but we got it in there, but it was silent on which side should the tempered glass be on. Should it be on the inside or should it be on the outside? Well, if it's for fire protection, it should be on the outside. Well, what happened, the manufacturers of the window says, it's too confusing for us. We're just gonna make both panes tempered. So it came out better for us at the end of the day. That's the way you see most of the windows come in today. Doors, foundation vents. That's the one that gets us sometimes. We don't have a lot here because we're mostly on slab, but some of the older homes do have basements, and they have places underneath where you need foundation vents there. So vents we'll talk about. Fire sprinklers, those are in the code now, but some of your old homes don't have it. Question is, can you retrofit? The answer is yes. You can retrofit for about $2 a square foot roughly. So it's a good investment. In our wildland assessment in San Diego County, we had ran into some engine companies that said, we just came from a house, the front window broke, the sprinkler went off and held the fire to a small size, and we put the fire up and plywood at the door and left. So they're triaging. So it will work, but that was never the intent. It was about life safety and getting you out alive. You have a fire. Spark arresters on your fireplaces. That's simple. Just needs to be replaced every once in a while. Class A roofing, here you got cement tiles. I love cement, doesn't burn. I have some forestry friends that say, just take it all and put it in cement and paint it green. That's the way they look at it, but that's not really helpful for the environment and balance of what we're trying to achieve. Roof ag vents, there's a lot of vents. Your decking, excuse the pun, but cliffhangers, cliffhangers are losers every time. Every time you have a house that's hanging over a cliff or a deck or anything like that, and it's uphill, it's gonna burn. So we enhanced the code requirement to make it heavy timber or non-combustible material or stucco, so it would last and survive a fire. So there's things that you could do if you have an existing condition that isn't too expensive. So the next slide is the video in Rancho Santa Fe.
On Rancho Santa Fe, Villa de Santa Fe and La Granada, there was a slight orange glow behind me. You actually can't see it now. It's died down significantly in the past hour, but the winds have kind of been picking up in the last few minutes or so, and that's what crews here are worried about. They've been cutting down trees in this area, hoping it doesn't spread into downtown.
Do you see those embers? Those are your enemies. It's not all your vegetation. The embers are created by the vegetation, but the embers are your enemy for your house. So when we talk about venting and places where they can enter, that's what we're going to try to help you take a look at in your homes.
And that's some of that video that we shot earlier. That's taken actually in Villa de Santa Fe and Villa de la Valle, where at least 3 homes were on fire. Now, these burning embers just filled the sky. It looked like a rainstorm of fire and ash. And fire...
See that truck right there? This is an interesting story. I always think it's kind of fun. That's Rancho Santa Fe Fire. In the back of this truck, he's got 60 lunch bags, paper lunch bags. And he's driving through this ember storm. When he got to the other side, he didn't have lunches left anymore because they all caught on fire from the ember storm. So we constantly learn. We've had engines we lose with paper elements in the filters, and they suck in an ember, catches the engine on fire. Today, a lot of the embers are metal and steel and mesh. So I always kind of like to share that with you. I was here on this fire, so I know exactly what happened, and I can still remember it like yesterday.
Firefighters say the big problem in that area are the palm trees because, they go up very quickly, the embers spread to other areas, and they say that's how this particular fire started, from flying embers nearby. They have been here all morning long working on kind of these hot spots. Again, they want to prevent it from moving downtown because there are a lot of old buildings in this area, also a lot of multi-million-dollar homes, very expensive area here. Now, I did talk to some sheriff's deputies that were patrolling the area. Although everyone should be out and evacuated from this immediate area, they say a lot of people are still at home. They're knocking on doors, going door to door, and they're finding that people are in bed, just kind of unaware of what's going on. So again, if you are in this area, you definitely should not be here at this point. And we will be here because we're kind of monitoring the situation. At first, we thought it was actually going to cross over behind us, but like I mentioned, they have been cutting down a lot of trees in this area. Now, here's what a fire crew had to say earlier this morning.
I just found out, just heard that I believe we lost a house down here and lost police. They're going in there now, but it sounds like they do have a house on fire in there. So all these little things are popping up, and all we can do is hit and run and hit and run.
Sorry, me where we are right now.
We're on Dale Bailey, probably about let's say about a half a mile from downtown Rancho Santa Fe, and it seems like this is our action right now, and over on Del Diaz. Those are the two places right now. So, but they can pop up anytime. Fairbanks Ranch, we were just over there a couple hours ago. So all these little hidden fires are all over the place.
So, to me, the ability of a structure to withstand ignition, essentially, to set a wildfire event, you have to have certain conditions to exist. Okay, come on. Sorry for this. There we go. Your home assessment of your structure determines the ability to survive a wildfire. Roofs, design of roofs, skylights. I've seen skylights melt, embers drop in the house because they're plastic, versus Velux, which are tempered glass that just drops right inside. Because on your Velux type, they come on your plastic ones, they have a little lip that sit right around that edge. And even sitting on the roof, the embers would sit there and catch on fire and then burn through. Under eave construction, walls and siding. Wood siding is really famous here, not a lot of stucco. That's good, because stucco has its down points, but we're going to talk about mulch a little bit later on. Door assemblies, cat doors, dog doors. That's where embers can blow right into the house. So it's something you want to think about. Windows, we talked about, decks, ignition resistant materials, and residential fire sprinklers. They all work, they're all part of the component. But there's a lot of things that are not covered by the building code outside your structure. And the simple ones are fuel treatment. We always talk about treating the fuel, reducing the fuel load. You have a lot of pepper trees. You ever hear of lacing a pepper tree up and cleaning up a little bit of the duff underneath? That's what you need to do. That's going to help you maintain a wildfire. Get rid of that duff and the stuff that's on the ground. Fencing material. If you got wood fencing that comes up to your house and touches your house, that becomes a wick. When that fence catches on fire, it burns down that fence line right to your house and catches your house on fire. So one of our codes in San Diego is you have to have 5-foot non-combustible separation between your fencing before it touches your house. Simple things that you can do. A metal gate would separate the house enough if you had a wood fence. So most of the fences I see are 3-rail, either plastic or they're wood. The plastic ones will usually melt. Some would burn, but most of them melt. It's a big mess on the ground. Outside outbuildings. I notice you've got a lot of outbuildings. The placement of those little buildings is very critical. The minimum distance you should keep them away from your house is 30 feet, minimum. Because when they catch on fire, that fire, it catches your house on fire. I had a guy that had a 10 by 10 metal building, kept his lawnmower and his gas in it. He was 5 foot from his house, caught on fire, caught his house on fire. Outside influences. The building code doesn't cover it, common sense does, and education does. Outside patio furniture. Everybody loves wicker furniture because that's really soft on the cushion. You sit down. However, in a wildland situation with those firebrands that we saw in the picture, those cushions and things are going to catch on fire. And when they catch on fire under your patio, whatever's above is going to catch on fire. Mulch. Mulch too close to the house. I have an article, they did a study shortly after the fires of what should be a good distance to keep mulch away from your house. And we, without doing scientific studies, said at least 12 inches. Well, after the study came out, it said 5 feet. And I have handouts, and there'll be a handout for you. 5 feet's a lot. But what's the advantage to you as a homeowner by keeping that distance mulch-free and ignition resistant? You're going to have less bugs and ants in your house. That's a really good advantage to you. It's not a pathway for those earwigs to come in and say, hi, how you doing? Trash cans. What does a trash can have to do with it? Well, doing our damage assessment, we found people had trash cans right outside the garage, real convenient, pop the stuff in there. Those embers come flying in, catch the trash cans on fire, catch the eaves on fire. Thus, we have a house that's lost due to the embers. Ornamental landscaping. I have a study that I brought for you tonight that said the first 16 to 58 feet from your house is the most critical. And the study was about, is 100 foot enough, or do we need more than 100 feet? And the study defined it, and they did in San Diego because we burned 4,500 homes down. They came back and said that's the critical zone. And it was mostly ornamental vegetation, Italian cypresses. Heavy oil sumac was one. People love sumac. It was next to it. It ends up burning their house down. So all that ornamental stuff that you really like, you need to kind of move it away from your house if you can. And I know there's handouts here that talks about the zones, 30 foot and 70 feet and all that. But keep it away from your house, and your house is going to have a chance to be there when you come home. One thing about vegetation management, and everybody's probably seen it, fire goes uphill extremely fast. So the steeper the slope, the faster it goes. And what happens is it preheats vegetation. As it goes farther, you can have ignition up to a mile before the fire even gets to it because the embers are landing in that. And I know, like any community, there's big rat's nest out there and all that vegetation, and those are really good sources of fuel that burn really strong. The 12 inches, keep your lawn irrigated. I've seen grass burn, green grass burn on a fire when we did damage assessment. So grass is good, but with our water shortages and your mountain slippage and all that stuff, probably not a good thing to have too much grass. And keep your trees drip line at least 10 foot from your home. So when you have this beautiful tree hanging, that pepper tree, keep it 10 feet away from your house. So it'll make it a little bit better for you. That's where we talked about pruning the limbs 6 to 10 feet above the ground. Your literature here says the same thing. I think it says 6 feet. Form a discontinuous path of vegetation. Screening. Everybody likes screening. I don't want to see my neighbor's house, right? So what you do is you put all those trees on one beautiful straight line. Well, that becomes a wick. When the first tree catches on fire, the next tree, and the next tree. A simple fix for that is you stagger the trees. You have one here, one here, one here, one here. And so you don't have that continuous wick. And then you keep your drip lines far enough apart so they're not going to be a problem. But screening is really critical and important, and the type of screening you get. So that reduces our wicking effect. Remove the dead plant material and tree branches. I call that lacing up a tree. You go in and you clean up the tree and make it look prettier. It's healthier for the tree, and at the end of the day, it usually helps the tree. People say, I'm going to plant ice plant. I can tell you, ice plant, if it's not maintained, it's not a good ground cover. because I've seen fire and ice plant crawl for miles in the ice plant and then pop up over here and catch something else on fire because they didn't take care of the dead ice plant that was underneath. So periodically people will take out the ice plant and clean it up and get rid of the dead material. That's simple stuff you guys can do out here. It's not hard. Propane tanks. I didn't see many propane tanks. I'm not sure if you have propane, but one thing about precautionary things on propane tanks is if they're on a hillside, anchor them to the hillside. Because when the fire gets there, there's only a little copper-inch pipe that goes there to the line that goes to your propane tank. And what will happen is that melts off and the propane tank rolls down the hill. And when it gets to the bottom, it lands in a big pile of vegetation that's burning. And the next thing you know, you have your propane tank blown off. And so that even creates more fire. So propane tanks need to be fast. Your tool sheds, detached garage play sets. I had a customer come in, he said, I got a King Kong jungle gym set I want to put in for my kids. I said, really? I said, what do I have to do? I said, keep it 30 feet away from your house. I don't want to go 30 feet away from my house. The kid's got to walk 30 feet. I said, what's the gym set about? Exercise, right? Go 30 feet. So he went home and talked to his wife, and his wife said, 30 feet. Cliff said, put it 30 feet, put it 30 feet. So he did. Well, 2007 fire came, right? Fire came out, his jungle gym set caught on fire, and he videoed that whole thing and sent it to me, and his house is still there today because he kept it 30 feet away from his house. Those are simple things that we can do, but the building code can't change it. You know, we don't control outside environment. So that's something that's helpful. Rubber mulch. Rubber mulch and jungle gym sets, you ever walk in that stuff and it's really cushy and it feels really good and the kids fall and they don't get hurt. It burns like heck. So it's not really a good choice to put on the ground if you're in a fireland area, wildland area, it's just gonna burn really strong. In fact, in our one community in Cielo, they said, oh, we got a structure on fire, all this black smoke's coming up. What was a jungle gym set that was burning up? We didn't lose anything. Roof covering. You got cement roofs, that's pretty good. Make sure your edges are protected. I saw some, I couldn't tell, but they didn't look like they had the metal piece that comes down. They call it a drip piece, a metal piece that comes there. So when your roof drips off water, it doesn't rot your fascia and stuff. That should still be there. You should have it replaced to make sure it doesn't leak. Mission tile roofs, the ones with big like that, they put bird stops in there. But it does also keeps out the rats. So that's the other side effect. If they can't get in there, the birds can't build a nest. And the birds build a nest, so that's really great fuel for the embers to catch on fire. So those are some things. But with your flat tile, you shouldn't have much problem. And your rain gutters, oh my God, I saw so many rain gutters today full of pine needles. That's something you can get at Home Depot. They got rain cover, go right over the top of your rain cover, right over the top of the rain gutter, and it's simple. And if you don't clean it out, it's gonna clog up your drain, and then the whole purpose of the rain gutter is gonna be down the drain because everything's gonna flow out on right where you didn't want it to go in the first place. So go to Home Depot, they have it, it's simple. Some of the tools, some of the stuff I'm gonna show you is not easy to find, but it is out there. Vents, all kinds of vents. I just picked this up on a job site the other day. Most people probably don't know what it is because you guys don't have stucco here. I didn't see much stucco, but this is what they call a weep screed. And what this does, it goes onto the bottom of the wall. And then you have your Tyvek paper, your plywood, and all that stuff comes down here. And so then they put stucco on the wall. Then when the rain hits it, the rain and the moisture, because cement is not waterproof, drips down and comes out those little holes. Well, if you have mulch right next to your house, and the mulch catches on fire, a good 3 or 4 inches of mulch will give you about a foot flame length. It goes up in this little hole, and it catches the Tyvek on fire and burns your wall. So this, there's a reason for it from the building code, but there's also a reason to keep mulch away, because you will lose your house if you don't do that. I've seen a lot of houses burn when they're doing triage on a wildfire, and they're looking at all the houses where you can save, which one's gonna work and all this. We think everything's good, but we have that mulch burn catches that house on fire, catches the wall on fire, and you end up going out and taking care of it. Your vents, the fire code and the building code changed this last code cycle to 1/8 inch screening. Well, we live in San Diego County, and 8th-inch screening and the pollens and the dust and the dirt are gonna clog it up. But I have a video, well, I'll show you where they have 8th-inch screen, and you can see embers coming in through the vents of 8th-inch screening. So there's other alternatives. The Brandguard vents, there's Vulcan vents, and these different vents have dual chambers. And so when an ember goes in, it gets trapped in the chamber, it doesn't go in your house. And I know people in this room don't store their Christmas decorations in the attic. We don't do things like that. Because, first of all, we gotta get a ladder, we're not about to do that. But years ago, people stored a lot of stuff in the attic. And so, paperback insulation. Embers blow in, catches the paperback on fire, and catches the rest on fire. So that's stuff that the codes changed, but in older style homes still may have that in there. I always loved it when our gas and electric in San Diego came in and said, we're gonna blow ground up newspaper in your attic space. I'm going, oh, I don't think so. Then you have can lights, those can lights like these that go up in there. Well, before we got the can lights that didn't put out as much energy, the can lights would catch the insulation on fire they put in there. Then they were supposed to treat it. So those are some things that are not too difficult to change or replace. I just did a remodel on my house, and this is what they call a Brandguard vent. Those little 3-hole vents that you have in your house, if you have that style, these are replacements. If you look at it, and I'll pass around later, and this is for different size vent holes, depending on whether you have 2x6 or 2x4 walls or frame or ceilings or rafters, has different sizes. And these are dual chamber, so an ember goes in and doesn't get into your attic space. This was created by a fireman out of Santa Barbara County. So, skylights, I talked a little about skylights. Velux glass skylights are good, you know, just to do that. Right now there's a code cycle change. They're talking about openable skylights. Not allowing it. Because if you're gone and you have your skylight open, a wildland fire is 2 miles away from you, and these embers come floating over and go into your house and catch it on fire, I don't know if I totally agree with it. They need to develop a skylight that when it smells smoke, it closes automatically for you. We have smoke detectors, but a lot of the things in the codes don't get changed until we make a code requirement. These vents would never happen if we didn't say you had to have a vent to prevent embers from entering the house. Exterior walls, foundation fence, we talked about that. Your combustible materials and crawl spaces, we talked about that. Well, that's pretty simple. And what I saw here, I didn't see any real problems in the homes that you had here. There's some vents that they created. I don't know if you've ever been to Colorado, but in Colorado, they have vents that are closable. And they're closable because of snow. So the homeowner has to go out and open and close these vents. This is one they made for fire. So you can close your vents instead of putting your fire plug in here. This is another way of doing it. This was automatic and would be spring loaded and activated inside. But when you get too many complicated things, that's what I like about this vent. It's not complicated. You don't have to worry about resetting it or do anything about it. But in Colorado where there's snow, different conditions, they have to do that. So they go out every winter and close all their vents. We talked about, I've seen some vent covers that actually slam down and close over the vent. I'm not a big fan of those, because again, it's more maintenance. Dryer vents, how many times you go to Home Depot and buy that plastic dryer vent? A little flap in there, keep the mouse and the rats out and stuff. And don't buy the plastic one, buy the metal one. And they usually have a magnetic on it, so it keeps it closed to keep those out. And you gotta clean your dryers vent every once in a while anyway, because you'll get lint in it. So. The next one is about James Hardy. That's a cement fiber board. And when it first came out, in the community I worked in, they said, no, you can't put Hardy board in. It gets ugly. Well, since then, they've made it look like wood. And so Hardy board is a really good product now. And here's a little test that they did for Hardy board. Your vinyl siding, your Hardy board, your wood siding. that little number over there that was 56 seconds of time before that stuff started to fail. See, now it's 2 minutes, 22 seconds. Part of the testing is the time frame, it's how long it takes to make it happen. Hardy board is a little bit more muddy than wood, but it's a lot more hardier than wood.
Is it wood impregnated with cement?
Yeah, it is a cement impregnated. It looks like a piece of cement. They're heavy boards, and they go up with screws, and they're really, you don't see it. It's good stuff. Siding. Siding, when you put it up, if you're putting up, I've seen some where you had batten board siding, where what it means you put plywood down, they put boards over the seams, and that's like that. When that board starts to warp, you start to get gaps, and that's where embers crawl into and sit and smolder with the wind blowing, and eventually will catch the roof or their siding on fire. So a simple water-based caulking, you can caulk those and stop it, and then you can stain it or cover it up. I mentioned a few ones we talked about. Hardy board, which we just saw. FRX is fire treated wood. Timber seal is treated wood. And stucco doesn't usually burn except for the weep street. That doesn't burn, it just allows the embers to enter into your attic, into your space in your wall. Stucco, there's the weep street. Remember the half-inch holes I was talking about? There it is right there. Mulch, keep it away from there because it's a loser. You don't want to lose it. I love your mulch on the trails. The only thing mulch will do, keep it less than, I like to see it 4 to 6 inches. Get much thicker than that, and you're creating some problems. I've been on fires where a mulch pile has been sitting for months. You get a call and those smoke's coming out, and you go over with a shovel and you hit it, and it's pure red inside. They've been cooking so long. You could cook a pig in there with no problems at all. But that 3-month pig might not taste so good. Eaves, your heavy timber is probably the best way. If you have a good framer and he cuts really good square eaves, that's good, but when you get an eave where the block in between's got a little space in there, kind of where you need to caulk it to prevent bees and embers from entering your attic space. 3-hole vent blocks, we talked about those. Windows, we talked about those. I'll show you some pictures as we go through on windows. Vulcan vent, that's an unusual vent. Vulcan vent has an incandescent material that when it's exposed to heat, it closes up. The problem is, when the fire is done and your house is still there, you got to replace all the vents and figure out how to get to them. But there's another option or tool that you can use. This is a very simple little fire. It's taken by an amateur photographer, so bear with us as we go through it. But if you look at the vegetation, it's not much on the hills here. See this cliffhanger there? The deck hanging out over the edge? Look what happens to it. It doesn't look like much vegetation. This is in Nevada. That heavy black smoke's not a good sign. Look at the hillside. It looks real sparse. It's got some sumac and some other stuff up on the side. Should be turned away. You can enclose decks. You can put stucco on them. You can make them more fire resistant if you need to. You can take the beams and you can stucco them. There's things you can do that aren't too expensive that will make it much more fire safe. You can see it's done by an amateur. You can get sick if you watch it too long. But look at these homes. You would have never thought, looking at this in the distance, that they should have caught fire. And we haven't heard the fire engines. They're still coming. near canyons and things that we looked at today, this is a risk. But if you do your field treatment, it's going to reduce that risk. Now you're starting to have house-to-house ignition. The first house catches on fire, the next house catches on fire. Depending on your setbacks between the homes, this might have 10 foot, 5 for each property line. Not a problem here, you've got big lots, you've got a lot of distance between the homes. So it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe your secondary units or your storage buildings or your first bars might be a little too close. And this is a matter of maybe 5 or 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Response time for a fire engine should be within 4 or 5 minutes. But sometimes they're not, sometimes it's greater. You can hear the siren in the background now. They are the wooden case. It's a metal fireplace that goes up in a triple wall, so the wood chimneys will burn. If it's hardy board, it wouldn't have burned. But that's what they were. Is the chimney itself is not wood. It just has a 3-wall vent pipe going out the top. Don't want to watch this again. Garage and detached garages. The neat thing about the new garage doors today, they're really weather sealed really nice. They go down. The old garage doors used to have about that much on the side and maybe that much on the bottom. Embers can blow in. What do we store in our garage? Things in cardboard boxes. They catch on fire. Water heaters are raised off the floor for a reason in garages, because if you had a gas leak, the vapors are heavier than air. It doesn't catch on fire. So all these code things are kind of brought in because of those reasons. So you can do no doors, add doors to protect combustion materials. That's simple. The doors are not that hard to put in. Replace low garage vents with ember-resistant vents. The old garages all had those garage vents at the lower side. That was to allow airflow, intake and exhaust, so the vapors wouldn't accumulate and catch on fire. Decks. Now, I'm not against decks. You can build decks, you can hang them out over the edge. Just build them out of the right material so they're going to be there when you come back. Some people like to store their PVC pipe underneath there and their wood pile and all that other stuff. It's just more fuel for the fire. It's not a good place to store. The State Fire Marshal, you can go online and you can look up a lot of fire-resistant material, but I find when you get in the big, heavy websites, it's really hard to find stuff unless you know exactly where you're going. I always like a website, you got 2 clicks, you can find what you want, not 17 clicks, you can't remember where you're going. Clean out the debris between the cracks. Now, deck material has come a long ways. This is deck material. This is Lifeline, this is Trex. When Trex came out, as a plastic deck material. When we tested it, it burned like heck. This is made out of recycled trash bags from a dump. So the Trex manufacturers got all excited when we in San Diego County said, you can't put Trex in because it burns too bad. You got to meet Chapter 7A of the code, and here's the testing. So they went back to the lab and they developed a fireproof Trex by changing the additives that they put into it. Now, the disadvantage to Trex, structurally, it's not as good as wood. If the Trex gets soft, and it's got to be on 16-inch centers, it will give and you can fall through the deck. Where wood can be charred an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch and you can still walk on the wood and it's not going to give you a problem. But these are 2 types of decking material that I brought that you can look at. It's usually heavy. You pick up a piece of Trex and it's like handling a piece of spaghetti. It's like this. But it's great for a park bench. If you want, not the weather, you can get it in different colors and stuff like that. There's a good place for it. It's just not a good place for decks sometimes. The neat thing about it too, they designed it where you don't see any screws or anything in them. They have little clips that go underneath, so it makes it really nice deck. We talked about that. Deck furniture, LPG tanks, fencing, really we talked about that. Other projections, stair risers, landings, decks, porches, balconies, non-combustible. We like to use the term 1-hour fire-resistant construction. But if you take a piece of wood that's been treated, like this is FRX treated wood, there's requirements to it. You can't take this wood and take your saw and cut it down here. You can do an end cut, but as soon as you cut it down here, you expose all the non-chemical wood product that's in there.
And how long is that good for?
Trex, this is treated under pressure. This is good for a lifetime. Now there's another one called Timber Seal. Timber Seal is infused with glass. Now I checked on them just recently because I wanted to make sure I was right on, and it didn't take off real good. And they used it in a house or 2 that I worked on. It was funny because the workers out there wanted to start a fire. They took all these little pieces of wood that were left over from the timber seal, they put it there, and they couldn't get the fire to burn because it wouldn't burn. And it was infused in a process. This is a Class A roof. Well, the code says the surface needs to be fire resistant. Asphalt shingles are your best, but your tile roofs are even better. They are much better, more durable, last longer. I could talk about roofs for days, but this one is a good one to use. Now, a metal roof, a metal standing seam roof that you see, when you put that on your roof, that's fire resistant, right? But when you read the manufacturer, it has to have the felt, has to be fire rated that goes underneath, because the heat creates so much heat that will catch the black paper on fire. So, little tricks of the trade. Bird stops, we call them rat step bird stops. Those are very good. This is O'Hagan vent. I don't think I have the O'Hagan vent here, but I have a flyer on it. There's your 3-hole vents. Here's what it looks like in a testing situation. Fire from the other side, this is blown into your attic. Here's your inside of your outside wall. Here's your studs going up and down. It's like a blowtorch in there. That's where science and fire got together and say, let's test it. How do we test it? How do we simulate it? How do we make it look like a real fire? And that's what they did. This is Brandguard vents. This is O'Hagan vents. Brandguard makes dormer vents. Dormer vents are some people love them. They think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just about what appeals to them. I'm not a great fan of them. But if you put one in, make sure it's a Brandguard, because you put the other ones in, they're going to have 1/4 inch embers go right down in the attic. This particular vent, we did damage assessment on the 2007 fire in the city of Poway, and what happened is the wind was so strong it took the vents and blew them up like this, and the embers went right down in the house and burned the house down. What they found out is the roofer didn't nail those boards down. So construction features and the detail can make a difference. And I have handouts for you, and you can go to the website, and you can look at the different type of vents and things like that. They've all been tested in meet Chapter 7A. Here's siding, flame spread up the wall. This is a flame penetration to a stud cavity. I had this in an Alpine fire. We went through, we scoped out the house, we're doing a damage assessment, all of a sudden this wall starts burning. So embers had snuck in. And they started in the bottom plate and consumed the bottom plate entirely. And was starting up the wall. And the bottom plate's the one that's on the bottom of the concrete. My favorite, mulch. This is mulch. Luckily, you can see it got pretty hot up in here. But this house didn't catch on fire, it was lucky. You might have had the right type of vent or a mulch in here. But this guy had mulch all over. This is what could happen here. Your mulch could burn up out there, and it's okay, because you can replace it. And in fact, on one of the fires they went on, it was a dump, and all their green waste burned. And they sold so much of that afterwards because it was potash. And potash is very difficult to come by. So they made money on it, but the neighbors down the street for the next 4 weeks complained of all the smoke that we couldn't put out. They had rainbirds going and D6 tractors trying to mulch it and get it all away. It's just one of those things. So keep it away from your house. This is a door. This is in Fallbrook, Gavelin Fire 2002. Solid wood door. Look at the cactus. They didn't do very well. This is just radiant heat. This is not direct flame contacts at all. This is about dual pane windows. You know, the day screens today on your windows, they're plastic, aren't they? They made them plastic so they wouldn't rust. But when an ember hits a plastic screen, poof, goes right through it. And where people leave their windows open mostly is in bathrooms, because they want to get ventilation and air through their bathroom. And usually it's on the second floor, and nobody's going to get in their house anyway. But you know, today, my recommendation is keep your windows closed, because today you can't hardly buy metal screening for your windows. And so this gets into the technical side, vinyl windows, fiberglass windows. Here's a picture I took. Here's the outside pane. You can see where it's broken, the inside's still there. These are actual after the fire when we do damage assessment, what worked and what didn't work. And it doesn't necessarily mean the fire broke it. When that wind's blowing 30 miles an hour and you got embers and you got my favorite Mexican fan palms blowing down the street, it can be one of those hitting the window. And you do have Mexican fan palms here. They do need some maintenance. They need to be skinned, and they need to take off the dead palm fronds, and they'd have to do that every couple of years. If you don't do the skins, and you can't do this to all palm trees, trust me, but the Mexican fan you can. Personally, I'd cut it down and get rid of it, but that's aesthetics. People like those big skirts and all that. It's not worth it to lose your house. And when firemen do assessment, they do triage of the homes. Who's going to, can we save this one? Is this a winner? Is this a loser? They have to make some really hard decisions out there, you know. And they look at this and say, this could be a loser, you know, because he's got all these little light flashy fuels here. May not be enough heat to get this wood to catch on fire, but this gets hot and fast. Those grasses, and it's uphill. I'm not going to get into this too technical stuff for you. But this is formulation of these plastic components of this wood flour, thermoplastic, additives, lubricants, compounding agents. This came from a test in Washington. But here is the key. This piece of material has more surface to catch on fire versus this one. So it's really solid is better, the channel or the hollow core or not, and it's not as strong. This is the one, I have a handout for you. Basically, this says the first 16 to 58 feet for your fuel treatment, that's your ornamental landscaping, needs to be cleaned up and laced. So 58 feet, and it should be okay. They did a test of 4,315 homes. That was 2001, 2010 fires in San Diego County. They went out and they analyzed it. And there's a whole research paper on it worth looking at, but it could put you to sleep. That's what you can do. Studies have found creating and maintaining a defensible space for the 50 to 100 feet wide around your structure is going to make a difference. Using fire-resistant roofs or VITs is another one. Studies have found why people don't do it. Why don't you want to go do this? It's simple. Time and expense. Can't find it. Misconceptions about how wildfire is never going to touch my place. It's not going to come to my house. Historically, it's a matter of when. That's all. Fire repeats itself. And when we go do a fire behave study of a particular area, we'll go back and look at history. The fire I was showing you in Rancho Santa Fe, the last time I went through that Rancho Santa Fe area was in 1943. And in 2007, went through again. What changed was the fuels. There was a lot more homes in that area. So you had home ignition, and shake shingle roofs. I'm going to talk a little bit about ornamental vegetation because it's dear to my heart. I think it's really important. And these are some simple things. This is a palm tree. This is a Mexican fan palm tree burning. And this is all the cut up where they cut the palm fronds out, but they didn't skin it. Because certain palm trees, you skin it, you're going to kill them. This is an oak tree. This is way after the fire's gone through. That oak tree is, we call them in the fire service widowmakers. And the reason we do that is we don't park underneath them after a fire because they can arbitrarily break a limb and end up killing you. Very similar to euc trees. They're very unstable sometimes. Eucalyptus trees will break limbs and come down, and they're really hard on you when they hit you. This is a picture of a palm tree I took in Rancho Santa Fe, and I'm a long ways from it. And that flame length, I would guess, is about 600 feet. And so, the other disadvantage to palm trees are not maintaining them, and habitat lives in it. You know what those are called? Rats. Rats live in the palm trees. And on the fire I went on, they had a bunch of Mexican fan palms, and we were protecting the house. It was the valley and draw coming up. And we hear all this squealing. Squeak, 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 squeak. And next thing we know, we have rats on fire flying out of the palm trees, hitting the ground and running into the unburned brush, which then was on fire. So the palm trees have some disadvantages. Now, oriole birds, they love it. An oriole, you know, those really bright yellow and black oriole birds, they love palm trees. They build their nest in it. So when you go do that, just be sensitive to what's living in those trees. This is Malibu. I got from some guys. It's not very far from here. This is your Italian cypress, my favorite. They had some around our Station 4 when the 2007 fire went through. The only thing to burn were those Italian cypress. So they came back to me and said, "Oh, Cliff, we want to replace them with more Italian cypresses." Not in my shift. No Italian cypress, sorry, not happening. So they didn't. They replaced them with something else. And when you have it so close, it makes a difference. Now this is a development called Cielo up in Rancho, and we took these photos after the Woods Creek fire, 2007. And we require all homes, when they're on the edge of a slope, to be 15 feet for a single story and 30 feet for a two-story. So when the flame comes up over the mountain, it goes over the roof and doesn't impinge upon the building. That's in theory. But when you have a 40-mile-an-hour wind, all bets are off. You can't control it. But this is, look at the fuel treatment. You can see right where they did it. And they were required to do the fuel treatment, 100 feet. And we also controlled the landscaping, the choice of plants and selection of plants that happened in this particular development. This is in an urban setting in Escondido. These are Italian cypresses that were between houses that caught on fire. And it actually burned this house, popped out some windows, and did some damage. So what we think is aesthetically pleasing, but also very fire dangerous. So just be aware of those things. Groupings, not lines. Remember, this is a line. Grouping is like this, so we can see that we don't have that straight line for the fire to follow. These are some things that I thought I'd throw out at you. Because history repeats itself. Fire comes back, It's just a matter of when. Fires burn areas, will revegetate with annual grasses and light flashy fuels. Takes a while for those old style fuels, 40, 30-year-old fuels, to come back. And that's what causes the biggest damage, the most heat. Defensible space you can do, and you can evacuate, and my recommendation is evacuate quick. If you have any fear, get out of Dodge and close all your windows, close your garage doors, don't leave your front door open, don't leave your garage door open, and get out of Dodge. Because we did a mass evacuation in San Diego, and it was nothing but a nightmare. And we did it through a 911 system where we evacuated areas at a time. But what happens is the hotels and the places for the people to stay get full, and there's no place for anybody to go. So have a plan. Think of what you're gonna do. What important papers are you gonna take? And if you have a computer and you have the cloud service, you can back up your files and stuff on a cloud. So your computer, you can lose it, but you'll still have access to your cloud. Now, I don't know how many people are computer savvy, but that's a helpful thing to have if you don't. And you can make the difference by doing some simple things. 1, fuel treatment. 2, look at your vents and look at what's around your house. And 3, look at your vegetation. Now, I've had people take horse manure from their barns and lay it against the wood siding of the barn. It actually cooks, it gets hot and smokes. It catches the barn on fire. So you lose a 1,300 square foot barn that you had horses in, but you just didn't put the stuff in the right place. And it may not have been the homeowner, it may have been one of the workers that didn't know or wasn't educated. So you can make a difference. Don't think it won't happen to you. They kept saying when we did shelter in place in Rancho Santa Fe, and I took a lot of heat over that. Has this ever been tested? Is this gonna work? I don't know, I don't want to test it, to be honest with you. But in theory, it should work. Well, 2007 tested it, and we didn't lose one home out of 2,500 homes. We had one person that had outside storage. He had a piece of OSB board. You know what OSB board is? That's a particle board that's all put together with glues and resins. And it was laying against his garage. And an ember caught that on fire. And then caught that on fire and went into his garage. And guess what? The sprinkler system put it out. End of story. Replaced the head, put the house back in service. These are the people that I have special thanks to and friendships and relationships. The Insurance Institute for Business Home Safety, Steve Quarles, he goes way back with me. Firewise, NFPA, of course the fire chief from Rancho Santa Fe currently allowed me to borrow the props that I collected when I worked there to show to you tonight. And the county of San Diego, Clay Westling, and he was the building official. And he made some significant changes in the building code for the county of San Diego. Now, most people don't understand how a building code or fire code's adopted. They have a base code, but each agency can make that code more restrictive. They can look at their hazards and say, oh, we need to do something different because we have hazardous chemicals, trucks driving through our community all the time, or our roads are in the way, or we have bad situations, we have a lot of wildlife. So when people look at codes, they fail to look at the amendments, what has been different about the code. And that's where it really makes a difference. Now, one thing I didn't talk about that I wanted to talk about is coatings. This is Rancho Santa Fe Station 4, CLO. It's not a bad looking station. I don't know how they did it, but the developers built it due to growth. They had to build it. So, and these are very interesting doors because the roll-up doors in a typical fire station go like this, right? But in an earthquake, when the door goes like this, it's not going to open or close. These doors are bifold doors. They go like this, and they open up. So it took care of that problem of the engine getting out. And today, these are built to a different standard anyway, because they can be a refuge for people to come and stay and things like that. So they're a much stronger fire station than we had before. But coatings. I had a man come up today and give me something about some coatings. Coatings work, okay? They work. The disadvantage to coatings is that UV. You know that old sun that beats up, and I have a little scar tissue from all this cancer that I collected over the years. If you don't treat and retreat when you put a coating on your house, you might as well not spend the money. And there was some insurance companies that say, hey, we'll give you special attention if you buy insurance from us, and we'll send a fast attack pumper and take care of it. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot more people being insured, and they don't have enough of those fire engines to go around and make it happen. So it doesn't always work that way. And I don't know if many of you have trouble getting insurance, or if you're on the FAIR program. I hope you don't, but you're in a very high hazard area, so it could be difficult to get insurance. So the coatings will work, but they have to be reapplied. The question to ask the coating manufacturer is, has it been tested by the state fire marshal? Because there is some coatings that allow you to do it inside of commercial and industrial buildings and concealed spaces. High rises have coatings on the steel beams that go up. They're all coated and everything when you look at those. If you gotta redo something, I don't see you doing it 5 years from now. But it will work. Now they have gels that if you're at home and you start your pool pump and you get this thing going, you can put these gels on. They work, but sometimes they don't come off. I mean, if you get here with aircraft gel, if you don't wash it off right away, that red will stain the engine or stain your car or stain your stucco if you don't get it off. So they will work, but I just recommend that you, if you're gonna go that way, stay after it. Otherwise, it's not gonna benefit you. And it should be tested. If it's not tested, testing means a third party looks at it and says, does this work or does this not work? Not the manufacturer, because he's gonna say to the moon. He's gonna say, oh, my stuff's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's not gonna allow anything to burn, we're good. Well, who's tested it? What third party agencies have tested it? So you have to look at that. And sometimes some of your local fire marshals, some of your building officials can answer those questions if they have tested by the proper testing company. Not all, but sometimes they can. So any questions that I can answer for you? Yes?
Do you close or open the flue to your fireplace?
Well, it's interesting you say that. Today's codes require when you have a fireplace, you have to have glass doors on them because of energy efficiency. But your older ones, I would recommend closing. Turbine vents that go on the top of a house, you seen those rotate? We have pictures of where the conditions were just right, where the turbine vent switched the other way and sucked all the embers into the attic. So I would recommend
So if you
closing.
don't have glass, you should have.
You should close it. Also,
And I can say if you close all the doors, when my house burned down in '73, several rooms that had doors, even though it was a total loss, the interiors were enough to salvage stuff.
right. And right now, there's a big push on you when you sleep by NFPA to close all your doors when you sleep at night. And it's hard for mothers to keep the doors closed if they can't hear their kids. But now you got these little devices you can put in there, you can hear them cry, so you can still close the doors. They just recommend that. Yes?
In the Santa Rosa fire, they said that the wires running through the trees were the cause of the fire. Is that an issue in this area?
I didn't see any trees directly under power lines, but the power companies, well, not touching. In fact, it's funny you say that. Today, I just had Davy's tree come out to my house before I left to come here, and they took my eucalyptus tree, and it was just starting to touch the power lines up there, and they trimmed it all the way back down. And I'm okay with that, but they want to take the tree out. They said, no, I like the tree. I said, you can come every year and cut it. Yes?
Now, going back to coatings, I don't know, I've seen advertisements, I'm getting brochures from a company called Sunfire Defense. They call their stuff SPF 3000 clear spray. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've had my house sprayed with that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with
Okay, try to repeat the question, just if you're gonna answer, so we know on the video what the question
it.
is.
Okay, the question was a particular coating, you get information
Yeah,
on?
a company called Sunfire Defense, they're good brochures out. And they call it SPF 3000 clear spray. I have no idea what SPF 3000
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay.
It's kind of like sunblock for your head. You got a 50
Yeah,
or a
right.
15. I don't know. I'm not quite sure on that. I would have to do research on it to find out.
Yeah, there's another, back in 2014, there was an article in Los Angeles Business Journal discussing an entrepreneur that just started out. Now, he calls his company Sun Seeker. So I'm just not sure if there might be the same people with different names.
Well, I would look at, for me, if I was looking at a product to do so, I look first of all, what's its weather testing? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Or is it 15? And so if you look at the weather testing and it's 10 years, it might be worth putting it on, but it's going to cost you more money. But if it's only been tested by 5 years and not by a certified testing company, I would worry. Yes?
Is there anything you can do
when you have an open eve, other than boxing it in to make it safer?
Okay, first of all, when you say open eve, are you talking about your starter board? Is it 5/8 or is it 2" or 1.5" starter? You know what the starter board is? That's that first couple of foot section.
Mr. Hunter.
Oh, back again, sorry. Where the starter comes together?
You talking about the overhang?
Yeah.
Okay, that's, my home is 2 inches.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, because you said you just put a cement roof on, so it'd have to support that. That one, the only thing you can do to help protect it is caulk any open seams that will go inside to the attic space. Around the edges, if you had 3-hole vents, you can plug those in there. What you do, you caulk them, screws, you push it up, and you're done.
Yeah, what I've got a lot of the screen vents.
Yes.
And some of them are not as intact as they should be, and it's hard to replace those without doing some damage to the wall.
Yeah, this is a brand guard vent, that's what you're talking about. It's a screen vent, got 1/4 inch.
It doesn't have all the baffles and stuff. It's
No.
just pure screw.
That's gonna send embers right into the house.
The screen.
Sort of backing at a longer distance with the history of the last year and fires that have been really very tragic, sort of within a cycle of fires recurring. Have you found communities doing much in terms of legislation and improving the safety of the community?
That's kind of what the wildfire protection plan is about, is assessing your values of your community, what are your issues, and then they get together and they do chipping programs, they come in, they get people to help get rid of some of the vegetation, and I haven't seen anybody go as far as helping you replace certain features on your home. I haven't seen that far.
You know, it seems to me that there are a lot of things that you can do with your home.
There is.
But the major problem, did you drive through the community?
Yes.
What were your impressions about the community in general?
The community
Aside
has,
from the homes.
well, some of the roads were a couple a little narrower, but most of the vegetation, you had mulch on the sides, your trails had mulch, I was fine with all that. But what I saw in some of the houses is heavy pine needle assumption laying on top, and I saw a lot of rain gutters full of debris.
What about the amount of fuel that
Fuel?
exists in this community?
It's not any different than Rancho Santa Fe or other communities I've been in. The
It's
difference,
an accident waiting to happen.
well,
It's probably the most threatening to our properties of anything that I can see existing.
the fuel's gotta be right to burn. If you've got green vegetation, it doesn't burn.
We
If you
don't have green vegetation, we have a lot of dead trees.
Yeah, a few
that
dead
allow us
trees.
to stand.
Lots of eucalyptus that are not irrigated.
Yeah, a lot
I
of
know
dead
about
stuff.
eucalyptus trees. Rancho Santa Fe had more, Lurpsil killed more trees than you can shake a stick at. And I had a hard time getting people to replace the trees or get rid of them because it was an iconic part of their community. And so we set a plan together through a wildfire protection plan that we would attack certain trees. And we looked at the trees that did evacuation routes. Which way do we get out? Which way do we get in? So this one, your evacuation routes are pretty limited here. That's why if you have a fire in the area, my recommendation is get out as quickly as you can. Close your windows up your garage and do that. Take your valuables with you if you have.
Have communities had any luck with eucalyptus maintenance and other trees?
Not-
Reducing fuel? Because that seems to be a political battleground in this.
It's a political battleground because of money. The bottom line is money. To take down a good-sized yew tree is about $2,000 to $3,000. That's the problem. If you do a CWBP and you identify that, you may be able to apply for a grant to take down dead trees. You can't do it as an individual, but as a group or a community, you could do something like that. I've seen that done. Yes.
Real quick, we were probably one of the original landowners up here. We've been here 70 years, and we live Crest Road and Eastfield. You probably saw us, we're right next to the water tanks. I have 29 utes that have literally died in the last year because of beetles.
Yes.
We're getting ready to clear cut, and I do mean clear cut, everything down the east and west side of my property that's dead, everything to the south side of me, all the way down to the fire road. I suspect we'll probably be in there for
at least a week and have to bring in extra heavy equipment. But the size of these utes are so massive, we're gonna have to bring special trucking in to get it out. We're talking 4 and 5 feet diameter
Yep,
trucks.
I've seen those. I've seen those size.
And they've all died within the last year.
The only precautionary thing is don't disturb the root system.
Yeah, we're just gonna cut them off right at the base and then clean everything up and go back in with new landscaping.
Perfect. But don't disturb the root system, because then you're gonna get in trouble with stormwater. You're gonna get all kinds of trouble with it. So just stay away from that, trim the tree down to the ground as close as you can. And they, if it's dead, it's gonna decay in a few years anyway.
Oh, for sure. I majored in ag engineering and forestry.
Okay. Well,
And I'm one of the fools that you see on TV driving the bulldozer on the fire line.
Yeah, I understand that. One of the things I had in Rancho, talking about yew trees, there's a place called Rancho Santa Fe Inn downtown. Really nice place. When I was a fire marshal, I couldn't get them to clean up the back of that place for nothing. There was 12 cottages back there. There was a draw, had all invasive kind of plants. It had palm trees. It had, you name it, it had it. So I retired, and the company buys the inn and says, I need help to work through a project here. Can you help me, Cliff? I said, sure. But I said, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta clean up the back. Show good faith to the fire department that you really wanna make this work. Be darned if they didn't do it. They spent 6 figures in 4 weeks to clean it all out. So it's money is the problem, is the driving factor of doing those kind of maintenance. And so it's time to. Yes?
What about solar panels?
Solar panels are great, as long, and most of the manufacturers now are lifting them off the deck a little bit. And the reason for that is so you don't get leaf litter and accumulation of material underneath there. Solar panels, I've only seen in my career, Mitch, maybe 2 units catch on fire. And those panels only burned the panel. They didn't catch the other ones on fire. The thing that firemen have to be aware of, that solar panels during the day are charging energy all the time. They have to physically cover them up with salvage covers before they go in there and work on them, so they're not charging. And they have disconnects and they have all this other stuff. But solar panels, I don't see a problem with them. As long as it's been put in by a professional and it has the proper breakers and locations and everything. And there's the state fire marshal has a whole handbook on how to put solar panels in.
Floor safe, I think it's rated at 1,300 degrees for 1 hour. Is that sufficient to protect?
Yeah, floor safe. You said the key, floor.
Floor, the stand.
Right. Is it stand up like this, or is it a floor in the ground?
Stand up, 5 foot tall.
That, if it's rated at that, it should withstand it. But I've been on fires where the guy had a great antique gun selection in there, and when they opened the safe, they were all melted and wiped out. I mean, rating or no rating, you know. And what happens is in the triage and fighting fire, you pick winners and losers. If a house is fully involved, you move on to the next house that's not fully involved, or you move on to the next house that's not on fire. So that just sits there and burns that whole time. The best safe is a floor safe, because what happens when you have a fire, all your debris falls down like this, and your heat's all going up. So that's my experience with safes that I've seen. Anything else?
I'll mention one thing.
Okay.
In the last fire we had about 4 or 5 years ago, all the engines sat on Crest Road for like an hour while the fire was getting worse and worse coming up. And it's a miracle that we didn't lose houses. It's just absolutely miracle. At the last second, the fire engines came down and saved probably 6 or 7 or 8 houses on Cinch Ring. And one of them came to a very special spot to save my house and my neighbor's house. And I'd like to have the fire station know that was a good spot for them to go next time it happens, because the guy that saved our house they were from Carson. They had never ever been in the city, had no knowledge. And Station 56, which is ours, was at the bottom of the hill down on Palos Verdes Drive south, because they're supposed to go to where the fire starts. So that's where they were, that all the local knowledge was nowhere around.
Yeah, that's correct. The same thing happened in Rancho. We had San Francisco engines in Rancho Santa Fe. We're like your community, no streetlights, darker than a hoot. You know, nobody can see where they're going. The street signs don't illuminate and let you see, here I am, turn left here, turn right here. We had the same problem. What happens is there's a strategy when you fight fire. And it may be they're waiting to see if there's gonna be a wind shift direction or something's gonna go another way. So they have to stay mobile. You will very rarely see an engine hooked up to a hydrant fighting a wildland fire. If they hook up to a hydrant, they're filling their tank so they can go fight more fire. So rarely will you see that. So I don't know what the circumstances were in that case, but I would say they were probably had a strike team leader or somebody telling them, let's hold off here. And if they're smart, when they come to a community like this, they're gonna back in and know which way to get out because they need an evacuation route just as well. So that's what they're gonna do in there. So it's hard to give you a good answer for that.
These guys are extremely brave.
Yes, and they all are. Every firefighter I've been on, no matter what community he's from, gives it 110%. They're not in that field because they don't like it. They're in the field because they want to make a difference. You have a question?
Yeah, I think, I was in that, we were in the same fire that Don was in. I think that the issue that I see is that the easements are not clear. They're all told, clear the easements. I don't see people working in the easements and clearing them. Our easements were cleared and the fire did go up the easement, but it scooted around.
Well, yeah, it was not as much fuel to burn.
But we all live on a hillside.
Yep.
Whenever you do that and you have a fire and the buoyancy causes the fire to spread more rapidly, keep the easements clean.
Well, that goes back to the homeowner's responsibility because I understand your community is owned by homeowners. It's not owned by a particular easement company, or it's not by a water company or somebody like that that you can go in and leverage. I wrote a notice to the city of San Diego for Del Diaz and said, clean up your weeds. And they came back to me and said, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can. My fire code says I can do it because you're just as responsible to clean your weeds as any other person in Rancho Santa Fe.
Well, we get a letter each year
Recommend.
from the fire department, saying we're going to walk through, we're going to see that your easements are clean and so on. But still, a lot of them aren't.
Right. The flip side is that is they hire a private company and you don't do it. They come in and they clear it and then they charge you on your tax bill. And that doesn't feel good because you didn't want to have that happen.
It's good exercise.
Yeah, it is. It is truly a good exercise. I recommend it. I take care of my property. I have 2 acres. I'm fairly flat though. But my house was built in 1935, had knob and tube wiring and screw-in fuses. It's a whole bunch different than today's, you know. So,
We
yes.
got very lucky because we had a perfect fire. I think it was 7, 8, 9 years ago perhaps. But in the afternoons in the springtime, you can get 20, 30, 40 mile an hour winds. That day, it was virtually windless.
Yeah.
And they hit it from the air.
That's good.
They hit it from the
Helicopters.
air. Otherwise, we would have had a real disaster.
That's why we have the fire department to do what they can when they can.
It was 2009.
2009.
Our property, we maintain very well because we really do worry about fire coming off the hill. My neighbors, and we've had the fire department out, and they see the brush and they say, yes, it is a hazard, and there are eucalyptus pine trees that are so tall, I mean, huge, and I know the embers will fly on the roof of our house.
What type of roof do you have on your house?
We have a, yeah, it is a cow shake. It was one of those softer asbestos roofs years ago that they stopped producing.
It's hard, you know, you gotta talk to the neighbor, and the neighbor can take care of this. If they say no, without the proper ordinances and the rules in place, it's difficult to enforce that stuff.
But the fire department comes out and looks and they say, yes, it is, but nothing is done.
Yeah, that's maybe Chief Lopez can answer that one, I can't.
Yeah, being a contractor, I got called to do a bid on a house up in Malibu. It was a brand new house, maybe 2 months old. They had cleared 100 feet around it. He had sprinklers on the house. And he said, will you give me a bid to clear it another 200 feet away? And behind him, there must have been 14 or 15 more houses going up the road and up the canyon. I never heard a thing back from him. 6 months later, he said, come on up and we have some work to do. I got up there. There wasn't a single house left. It looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off.
Yep.
And he told me the fire came up the canyon so fast, he had enough time to turn a sprinkler system on, get the dog, get the wife, and get out.
That,
But even with the sprinkler system, it completely wiped everything out.
yes, it will. There is conditions that we can't stop. Just like the one in, the fire just happened in San Diego through Santa Margarita and all that area through there. The horses, 600 horses evacuated in there. They couldn't stop that fire. And then the controversy came about how come the helicopters don't fly at night? San Diego City's equipped, and you got a $2 million helicopter. Cal Fire doesn't fly at night because they don't have $2 million helicopters.
In '09, there were helicopters flying and dropping a lot of stuff on
Yes.
fire.
They do, in certain conditions.
At night.
At night.
That's because they were specially equipped with the right equipment to do that. Yes.
Real quick, back to that one story. He rebuilt the house. He has sprinklers on the roof, and he has sprinklers underneath the eaves, so he could literally water his entire house down from the top to the bottom.
Here's the king. What size water meter did he have?
Pardon?
What size water meter did he have? If he
You
had a
better have
5,
good one, because I have a 2-inch main myself.
if he had a 5/8 inch meter, he's only going to get 51 gallons of water. That's going to operate 3 heads. So he's got all these heads out there, all
Right.
go off, and you're not going to have any water at all.
Yeah.
So it's not designed for that kind of concept unless you have the pressure in the water to do it.
So my house, when I rebuilt, I put in 2.5-inch main. You bring a fire truck up my driveway and hook up to one of my 2-inch.
You got national standard threads on you, take that.
Yeah.
Do you recommend, in terms of the best siding for properties, putting stucco as long as you don't have mulch against the stucco, or putting wood that's using a different kind of non-wood product for siding? And then I want to ask you a question: what's the best venting system that you think?
That's a slippery slope because a lot has to do with associations and what they require and don't require. But I would say stucco's good. I would say your brand guard vents are good. I would say your O'Hagan vents are good. And there's pictures of the O'Hagans here on the handouts. And so hardy board siding's good and it looks just like wood. The other thing is the code has an exception for heavy timber. How about a log cabin? You know, log cabins have heavy timber, but you're not going to build a log cabin. But that's a heavy timber construction. But I would say the best truly would be hardy board siding or something of cement fiber that isn't going to burn.
Even better than stucco?
Yep. Stucco doesn't burn, but it cracks like a champ.
But the fire, does it get through the cracks?
The fire gets through the weep screen right here.
Okay. And you have to have the weep screen with every stroke.
To meet the building code, so the moisture as it hits the wall comes out and drips out. That's what this is. That's why I brought this one. This is a new weep screen from a subdivision going in forward. I picked it up as scrap land on the ground the other day because I knew I was coming up here. And if I talk about weep screen, people don't understand unless they can see what it looks like. It actually physically gets nailed up and then the stucco and everything comes down here and it's all covered. But again, it has to do with architectural desires of the community.
But if you keep the mulch away, then that minimizes the possibility.
Exactly. Keep your mulch away. In fact, I would always recommend if you pour a new slab or a new house, pour an extra 12 inches on the outside, 4 inches thick, then you got your built-in separation.
Or just rock it in.
Yeah. I've seen it rocked in, I've seen pavers put in there, I've seen a lot of different material put in there to protect it.
The screens that are, we have very long eaves on our houses here. Can you either just remove the openings in the eaves, or
or do they build something that is made to order, to cut, to fit for these small
Well, if
screens in the eaves?
the screens and the eaves, you don't want to remove them, because that allows fresh air coming into your attic, so your attic doesn't rot from moisture and mildew. But they do have, a manufacturer has different kinds of, Brand Guard makes a vent. There's one there. Here's another Brand Guard that you could get to almost fit that exact opening.
Where do you buy those things?
Well, the brochure has a handout. They tell you where you can buy them. They're different
Would you like to
places.
hand out your handout?
Oh, you want a handout? I can talk about handouts.
I'd like to save some questions.
So that's one of the things that we're gonna do with the CWPP. All that information will be available for you guys right there. So you don't have to be looking for it. We will put in there for you. That handout will be part of it. So.
But like, for those that have long over eaves and they got 3-hole vents, this is the way to do it. It's easy. These cost about $3.50 to $4 a piece.
Those are the ones on the top of the roof, with the openings, the vents?
These are on the, underneath the eaves, there's 3 holes usually. We call them eave vents. I don't know if you have, it sounds like you don't have these.
Oh.
You don't have that. You have the long ones
We
like
have these
these.
long, narrow ones.
But they have eave vents like this that'll work.
What about the pipes that go off the top of the roof that are open, they're vents to put on those as well?
Well, some of those pipes are for sewer vent and water venting, and you don't want to mess with those, because otherwise your house is not going to have the aroma that you would like to have. And we found very few incidents where embers have gone in through the pipes and caused fires. Now, I have found incidents, and in fact, at one of our fire stations, we had a rat come down through the down pipe.
I just had my exterminating company come out and rodent-proof my house.
Yeah.
They put little mushroom things on top of those.
As long as it can breathe, that's okay.
It looked like a little mushroom.
Yeah. Chief?
Any more questions?
Do we see that round vent that you're gonna pass out?
This one here?
But we don't have this kind
These are different size vents, different size holes.
of, you look around the house, you see.
You don't have these that do deep.
Oh,
That's the
that would be nice, but they don't.
You should have a screen.
So thank you everybody for coming. And give a hand to. We're just gonna do one quick exercise real quick because we need your input for the CWPP. So you're gonna give about 5 to 10 things that you think you can do, what you learned from him, that we should include in CWPP. And Mina's gonna write them down here, and then we're gonna real quick vote on and find out which ones are the one we're gonna be prioritizing in there. So raise your hand.
Change the code? Is this what you asked us to do?
Just what can we do in your community with what you learned from Cliff today, especially about the homes and about
Well,
the
here's
construction? Give me some ideas.
Well, here's what I would like. I'd like to be able to have somebody come out and inspect the house, take a look at all these vents that I have, to see if in fact they are, you have the ability to keep the embers out.
Okay.
Now, my pest guys came out. They said they're all screened, no problem as far as rodents are concerned.
So home assessment or home assessments?
Vents, yeah.
Perfect, excellent. Last one. Yes, sir.
I never had any idea that vents were an issue. I mean, in other words, we got all kinds of vents and screens and stuff, and I had no idea that was a problem. We have a concrete home. I said, hey, what kind of danger are you?
Okay,
Reinforced concrete, but
So it's a vent, so it's a more education.
Well, just to learn about vents, and it is an issue,
Yes.
because actually I've never heard anybody say anything about vents before.
So education on.
It's obviously a big problem,
So perfect, I loved your point. So this is stuff that we're gonna be putting in there, and it'll be part of the CWPP. It'll be a document that you can refer to have all this information in a single document. Yes, ma'am.
Possibly the association of the city considering recommending on new developments that they use hardy board instead of wood siding?
Better term would be ignition resistant material.
Thank you. Whatever you politically correct.
That would be a
because I
better-
happen to have hardboard on all of one house and my garage at this house.
Right.
And I swear by it.
There is other companies that make similar products, that's why I say just ignition.
It's like calling it a Xerox
Yeah,
machine, yes. so
exactly.
yes.
The copy machine.
Hard siding.
Okay, yes, madam.
We'll recommend public education and having gutter guards for the reasons you cited.
They sell a product, it's a brush. It's a giant bottle brush. And I have them in all my gutters. And the leaves can't get in there. And then once a year, you just dump them out, put them back in. But the answer is, and if you're interested, I can give you the name of it. But it's a giant bottle brush. In fact,
Is that where the downspouts at though? Is that the?
I put over everything. I mean, water can flow through it. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yep.
And that's what it's for, is to keep leaves out of your gutters.
Excellent. Again, that's the stuff that will be in the CWPP. Yes, madam.
Require that wood shake roofs get replaced by, within the next 15 years or some kind of date.
We still have wood shake roofs. We still have wood shake roofs here?
Yes.
Yes.
I just replaced one last month.
See, the wood shingle roofs, the challenge with replacing them is the way they were built. They were built with 1x6 slats, and the shakes would go on those. Well, when you replace it with another material, that means you've got to re-plywood or redo your whole entire roof. So the cost starts to go up. Not impossible, but the cost is.
I've got one. I think we should be able to report dead trees. And that there should be a requirement that dead trees be removed from both the roadside and from private property.
I think the definition of dead needs to be analyzed first, because sometimes a biologist can come in and they can treat a tree and save it.
We have an arborist,
Okay.
don't we? Still? Still have an arborist?
We consult. We hire that out.
Well, the city apparently is taking an aggressive approach on this, apparently. They're not gonna wait for complaints anymore. That's what I understand, but I'll say this is something to last city council meeting, but it didn't. They're thinking about it. Thinking about spending the $7 million surplus.
I have a suggestion. If you have concrete all around your house, the water from the roof will drop onto the concrete, and you don't need gutters at all to collect leaves.
That's an option, yes. Concrete's expensive though, gutters are cheaper.
What is that?
Gutters are cheaper than concrete.
Yeah, I took all my gutters off.
I'm not a real fan of gutters.
No problem.
I didn't have any gutters at one time, no gutters at all. All I did, I had surface drains. And I have planters with surface drains in the planters. So the water would go into the planters and down the surface drains. Okay, I also put French drain around the house because I do have a cellar. I have put a few gutters back on there, just because. I don't know why I did it, I just did it. But yeah, I have my guys go out every year and clean out the gutters.
Well, today when I drove through, there was a lot of gutters that had a lot of pine needles.
If you have pine trees, you got a problem.
Well, eucalyptus trees will do a good job.
I have no use for pine.
The reason we want you to clean them out, here's what happens. The pine needles catch on fire. Then they catch the edge of your roof on fire. Now, that's if you have aluminum ones. What if you have plastic gutters? What happens with plastic gutters in the picture? They melt and they fall to the ground. Then they catch your vegetation next to your house on fire.
Skylights, that's a, I don't know if my skylights are tempered glass or what they are. I've got a lot of skylights, so that could be an issue.
Anything else that you guys is important for you what you heard tonight? So,
Mulch control and making sure it doesn't stay
okay.
adjacent to the home.
Okay, mulch culture. So I gave everybody 2 stickers right there. You're gonna come over here, and when you come over here, take advantage of all the handouts that Chief Hunter has here. One of them, by the way, is the O'Higgins,
That's it. Yeah, the whole,
the vents, the roof vents that you guys were asking, and the mulch. Come and get that. But select right next to it, and which one of these, which one are the most important for you. You can put 2 of the dots in one, or you decide one on one and the other one. And based on your vote, we're gonna prioritize, and it's trying to do some work on that. But that's the part, the community wildfire protection plan. We have people like Chief Hunter coming over here. We have 3 more speakers coming in the future, but your input is very important. So your neighbors weren't here today, invite them to come next time so they can listen with you. But I want to thank you for coming, spend time with me. Come and post your vote. I see what you're doing.
Next seminar is gonna be
The fire department comes out.
April 4th, same place, same time.
The fire department comes out, they just look for clearance. They just look for clearance. They don't look at the house.
you got that now? Is that?